Hello everybody, Thomas Fleming here. Before we get started, I want to say that I'm surprised and flattered that my account was cloned. I'm feeling privileged to be worthy of Satan's attack. I apologize for you having to see that. I was talking with somebody here at the campsite and we were talking about God and we just let time fly. He almost missed his checkout time where we were talking. Hard to shut me up when we're talking about my favorite subject. I've blocked and reported the clone. It's one of those standard tricks, and it's something you need to pay attention to. If you get an email, it can look like it's from a legitimate site, but you make the name longer than what it can display, and you don't see that it's, Amazon. I'm a hacker, whatever they want to call it, can be displayed after that, and you never see it because there's only so much room. Now, I used Amazon, it's a short name, but it works with a long name. My name is long because I tried every version of the end times, and there's 20 million of them out there, and they just can't come up with it. I'm in my new campsite. I'm in Mississippi. I don't want to say where. And it's a lot of people here. It's very busy because the weather's nice here. People going by, I'm waving to now, walking their dog and having a nice walk. It's in the 70s. Now, we've got rain coming, but I don't worry about rain. I need to get out and explore the park some more, and I'm going to do that, but I have to keep an eye on the weather. I have 2 layers of clouds above me, and as I look up, the lowest layer looks like it's going 30, 40 miles an hour. It's just zipping by, but we're not feeling it down here because it's still higher than the very lowest layer, which would be where we are now. So weather can be interesting. God created it. Okay, so my subject for today is, and it's sort of a rhetorical question, do you ever get frustrated with God? God wants you to do something and he doesn't give you apparently what you need to do it, or he's giving you what he thinks you need and you think you need more. So we're going to look at a couple of examples, and my best example is to turn to a very well-known patriarch, and that's Moses. He learned real quickly that, if you do something socially and it's unacceptable, you have a problem. We got to watch social media. Facebook restricted me before I completely cut my account out because they said I posted hate speech. You've listened to me. Do I sound like I'm posting hate speech? But to the devil it is. So, and then having my account cloned, that was good. That was a smart way to try to sneak in stuff in there. I do ask for money, but they're all in my normal videos. You can see what the links are. And I try to keep my main account updated with the same links. I'm sometimes a little bit behind because I got to do that maintenance on my laptop. The phone is limited by what it can do. But Moses got, frustrated a number of times. He got so frustrated at the very end, we're going to get to, that it cost him dearly. He didn't get to enter the promised land that was promised because he disobeyed God. We'll get to that in a bit. So I'm going to turn to Numbers. Some of these books sound boring. Numbers sounds boring. Why would I want to read the phone book? But it's about a lot more stuff, so you gotta go through these. Leviticus, I think, is the hardest one to read because it's all the rules and stuff. And it's hard to do. You can't do all the rules. If you could do all the rules, Jesus was not needed. He came down here because we can't do all the rules. I'm just going to read a little bit. I'm going to jump around here a little bit. I'm going to start in Numbers chapter 11, right at the very beginning. Now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of their outskirts of the camp. And the people cried out to Moses when Moses prayed to the Lord. the fire was quenched, and he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord had burned among them. It's part of what I was talking about. Really, God does not really have wrath, but he sets a world up to work in harmony. And when you decide to work out of that harmony, you bring in the disharmony. So we'll have to find out sometime when we get to meet him what a lot of this stuff actually means. But bottom line is, they were never happy. They actually, after they escaped from Egypt, had thoughts of wanting to go back and be slaves and be worked. When they were there and working as slaves, they were complaining that they were being overworked. Moses, help us. And he gets us free, and it's like, we don't want to do this. We want to go back. Fickle people. All of us are. So anyhow, I'm going to turn to verse 11. And Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, everyone at the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was greatly aroused, so Moses also was displeased. So Moses said to the Lord, I'm going to read this in my voice, but picture Moses doing this. Why have you afflicted your servant, and why have I not found favor in your sight? That you have laid the burden of all these people on me. Did I conceive all these people? Did I beget them, that you should say, carry them in your bosom, as a guardian carries a nursing child, to the land which you swore to your fathers? Are these the people of Moses, or the people of God, basically? For they weep all over me, saying, give us meat that we may eat, and I'm not able to bear all these people alone, because the burden is too heavy for me. If you treat me like this, please, kill me. This is Moses. If this is the way it's going to be, I don't want to play anymore. Kill me. If I have found favor in your sight, do not let me see my wretchedness. There's a channel out there called Wretched. What's his first name? Last name was Friel. Can't remember his first name, but basically, it's a good channel to watch. He kind of talks like a newscaster, an old-style newscaster. He's got that commanding voice for doing that. But the people, they're getting free food, they're getting their food, they're getting their manna, and that's not enough. They want meat. So God gives them quail. That's not enough. No matter what they get, it's not enough. You can't please some people, no matter how hard you try. It's getting busy here. It must be the witching hour, the 11 o'clock time frame that people start leaving. I think that's what it is. We got 3 cars leaving. One guy should be leaving, but he's getting a shower. The one I was talking to that I kept him from being on time. But we had a good meeting. All right. I'm also going to turn to, was it 20? Where were we? Okay, Numbers chapter 20. I'm looking at verse 20, that's not it. Chapter 20. Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron, their leaders. Moses wasn't a speaker, if you remember back in Exodus time frame. So he let Aaron do his speaking for him. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, if only we had died with our brethren, died before the Lord. Why have you brought us up the assembly of the Lord into the wilderness, that we and our animals should die here? It's like a soap opera. And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines. They hadn't gone into the promised land yet. They were up on the hillside looking down at it. They hadn't gone in yet. Remember, they didn't go in the first time because they sent the spies ahead. And most of the spies came back and said, it's too dangerous, we can't go. That's why they were punished to live in the wilderness. Until everybody who denied the promised land died off, basically. A whole generation died off. There's no water to drink. So Moses and Aaron went up from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of the meeting and fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take your rod and your brother Aaron and gather the congregation before you. Speak to the rock before their eyes, and I will yield its water. There you shall bring water for them out of the rock and give it to drink to the congregation. So the Lord took the rod, and they did as God commanded. Remember, he did this once before, but God told him to strike the rock with his staff, and he did. So that's the connection here. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, hear now, you rebels, you crazy people who just can't have it right, must we bring water for you out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. That's not what God told him to do. Moses was mad. In his anger, he reacted wrongly. He was told to speak to the rock. Thus the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me and hallowed me in the eyes of the children. You didn't respect me in front of all these people. Therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. This was the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel contended with the Lord. Moses, as they were being led down into the promised land, had to look from above to see them go in. And we can talk about that later on. But pretty much this generation is almost over with. Aaron dies shortly after, and it's the younger generation takes over, and we'll come into that later on. The key is that here is a very renowned leader, very well known to God, and he got mad at God and didn't do what he was told to do, and he got punished. We can talk to God. We can complain to God. He wants us to talk to him. But be respectful when you talk to God. Remember who he is. He wants to be your friend, but he is not just your friend, he's also God. So have that respect. The Bible sometimes uses fear, but basically it's the same thing. You respect his ability. And if he tells you to do something, if it doesn't make sense, if you know it's from him, do it. And I'm going to look back now at Exodus. We're going to be in Exodus 5:22, I guess it is. They've already had this, they've already been talking to Pharaoh, and he'd been talking to him for some time, and the Pharaoh kept hardening his heart. We as individuals can harden our heart. Be careful that nobody ever becomes like Pharaoh, because then there's no hope. If you block out God completely and just totally retaliate against him and everything that he does for you, you're going to where the place the devil goes to. It won't be good. So in the previous part of this chapter, the people are complaining that Pharaoh is making life harder. He made them make bricks. They're making bricks for whatever they were building, whatever the project was. And they would supply the supplies, and now Pharaoh's telling them, well, we were supplying the straw that you would put in these clay bricks. The straw was like rebar, it would strengthen the brick. He says, we're not going to gather it for you. You got to put your own people out to gather it. So we give them more work. And this is one of many things that they did to toughen things up. So the people were complaining, saying, every time you go talk to Pharaoh on our behalf, life gets tough for us. It gets worse. There's a purpose in all this stuff. When we go through trials, there's a purpose in it. Yes, it's hard, there's a purpose. And these people here hadn't learned the purpose. They still didn't throughout their whole time. I don't think they've ever learned the purpose. If they ever learned the purpose, they wouldn't have had Jesus come down. He had to fulfill this because they just couldn't get it. So I'm going to go down to 22. So Moses delivered to the Lord and said, returned to the Lord and said, Lord, why have you brought trouble on these people? Why is it you have sent me? For since I have come to the Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, neither have you delivered all your people. He's complaining again. So the Lord says to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For a strong hand will let him go, and with a strong hand he will drive out of his land. So God basically is, if Pharaoh's going to harden, God's going to harden even more. And God's got more to work with. And God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, Lord, I was not known to them. I also have established my covenant with them. I've given them the land of Canaan, the land of the pilgrimage in which they were strangers. I've also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage. And I've remembered my covenant. Therefore say to the children of Israel, I am the Lord. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, which is what they wanted, but they wanted it, yesterday. I will rescue you from their bondage, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments, telling them what was to come. Now, they didn't know that there's some other things that they were going to mess up on. They were supposed to leave Egypt immediately and go into the Promised Land. If the scouts had come back, the spies had come back, all in agreement saying, yes, we can beat these people, they would have gone right straight in. That's what God told them to do. They had second thoughts. I call it the Peter principle. He's walking on water until he looks at the surroundings and then he starts to sink. They did the same thing. We all do it. Every one of us does it. We can be on top and then all of a sudden, what's happening? I'm sinking. God save me. Oh, ye of little faith. I'm sure he gets tired of saying that. I think I have a little speaker there and put it on auto, so I just push the button. Okay, here I come, ye of little faith. I'm going to save you again. I just record that and just keep playing it over and over. I'm sure he gets tired of it. But anyhow, Moses dealt with these people most of his, well, I'm not going to say most of his life, half of his life. He would have dealt with them more, but he made that early mistake of taking the law into his own hands, which is what I warn you guys about all the time. There's so much going on. All the rioting that went on around this so-called January 6th incident, which was a setup. It was an absolute setup. They were baiting people, and they got them to take the bait. But they're not going to know about the baiting because they're going to cover that up. Maybe some of it's been out already, and some of it we've heard, but then they're going to say, well, whoever said that was, lying. Satan is better at this game than you will ever be, so don't think you can take him on in this world. This is not a physical battle. It's a spiritual battle, and that belongs in God's hands 100%. Now, we may get a message to carry, and we often do, but they're not going to accept the message any more than they accepted Moses' message. Who wouldn't believe everything that Charlton Heston said? Well, Moses didn't till the very end. God had a plan. He had a plan for a river to part on that day that they came out. I don't think God was standing on the mountaintop overlooking that river valley and going, okay, here's my magic wand, I'm going to part the river, you can go ahead and cross. He didn't do that. That would be a simple task for a God. Anybody could be God if that's all you had to do. Play Harry Potter. No. When God set up the entire universe, on that day, he cordoned off something to happen, probably a big earthquake out in the Mediterranean. There was a big volcano that erupted thousands of years ago. That might have been part of that. It would have caused a tsunami. And if you've ever seen the way a tsunami works, the one that they did with Japan, it's not a lot of water. It's the power of the force behind that water. And before the water comes in, the water goes out. That's how a tsunami works. On the beach, they were showing people standing there and watching the water go out, the tide go out, apparently, was what they thought. But it went out way too fast. And then at the end, it came crashing back in. Not in surfing waves, but just in that wall of water coming right back in, filling up the gap and going further because it had more impetus to it. And it flooded all those surrounding areas. That's how a tidal wave works. It was probably, and I'm guessing, I'm a scientist to a degree, I'm guessing that that's probably what happened. I don't believe it looked like the movie where you got a wall of vertical water hanging there with nothing there to support it. I don't think that's how it worked. It talks about it going all the way out and coming back in and crashing in and taking out the Egyptians when they decided to cross. This had to take some time. A wall of water would not have vertically stood like that over a period of time unless God used magic for it, and I don't think he uses magic. He uses the earth. He uses the laws of everything that he created. So I believe it was the tsunami, pulled the water out. They had 1 million people. You can figure out the men, you got the total of the men, then you got the wives and children. They probably were 1 million people. You can't get 1 million people across there in 30 minutes or 30 seconds or an hour. It had to be a day, at least, maybe even 2 days. Probably more like a day. They go out. At this time, as the last ones are crossing, the water's starting to come back in. They probably don't see it at the beginning, but it's coming back in. And when they're up on the other side, the Egyptians don't see it either, and they start racing across. Chariots first and horses, they're going to try to trample them under their feet and kill them. Then the water comes in. Which is more important, whether God could do this physically by just waving a magic wand, or whether God can ordain the entire universe from beginning to end and know everything that's going to happen at any given time and coordinate everything to happen right when it's supposed to. It went out just before the Egyptians got there, or right when they got there. It came back in just as the Egyptians went in. The Jews crossed, the Egyptians didn't cross. That was ordained and planned in God's plan when he laid down the foundation of the universe. I think that's more important to see God from that point of view. That makes him even more powerful, that he knows everything that's going to happen throughout the time, from beginning to end, the Alpha, the Omega. And he knows everything in your life that you're going to do. Now, you're predestined, but he knows you. If you're married for a long time, you know your spouse. You know how they're going to react to something. God's like that. But he has the ability of also knowing how the universe is set up and what you're going to respond to. It's amazing how powerful and how diligent he is in planning everything. For us to even think we could do a better job than him, it's ultimate foolishness. Yeah, he teaches us how to do things, but he's not teaching us how to do things so we can replace him. He's teaching us how to do things so we can work alongside. There's a difference. That's why the analogy is that we're the bridegroom and the bride. He's the bridegroom, we're the bride. Get ahead of myself in my talking. Because that's the kind of personal relationship that we need to have with God. Not the physical side of it, but the love side of it, the emotional side of it, the supportive side, the caring side, the wanting to be with this person's side. That's the side that we're supposed to try to be with God. He wants that from all of us, from every human being on this planet. And it pains him that not everybody's going to be able to take advantage of that. The free gift of salvation. You don't do anything to earn it. It's free. Already paid for. Imagine somebody giving you a American Express card with unlimited balance on it. I'm not talking about a worldly thing, but you basically, all your financial worries would just disappear. Well, all your spiritual worries should disappear the same way. He's got our life planned out in a way that will be the most beneficial for us personally and the most rewarding for us personally. It's not just that you're going to make a widget every day. You're going to make 10 widgets, and you're going to pass them down the line to the next person who's going to assemble these widgets into some kind of a thingamajig. It's not the world that God created. Look at the world that he started with. Adam and Eve walking with God in the garden. Fellowship, that's what he wants. In a peaceful environment where everybody gets along. There's no fighting. There's no, even the animals were friendly with humans. I don't know what they ate back then. Maybe they didn't need to eat, or maybe they only ate fruit. I don't know. It's not really clear. We know that there were orchards there. And there was one in particular in the middle they weren't supposed to touch. It was a fruit that we weren't supposed to eat. Excuse me. It didn't say an apple. People have coined that, but it's not necessarily an apple. It doesn't say, it says it's a fruit. So, it's a figurative parable. It's like a lot of things that are either super distant or super unexplainable. How can you understand having the knowledge of good and evil? Well, we have it now, but we don't know what it would have been like not to have it. So it's hard to compare. So it was told to us in a type of a parable. It's all that's necessary is to know that it happened. Whether the earth was created in 6,000 years, as many people think, or whether it was over billions of years, and those were actually 6 time periods or steps or whatever. There were 6. The word day is used in the Bible, but it also says a day is 1,000 years. How do you, and 1,000 back then was like saying infinity. These people didn't read or write. They didn't know math. Saying 1,000 was like an infinite number. They couldn't think of anything any bigger than that. So a lot of it has to do with the context. But if I disagree with you on the beginning and the end, as long as we have the middle right, as long as the gospel is true, as long as we're right on the gospel, that we accept Christ, and that we try to do like James says, we don't get to heaven by works, but if you're going to heaven because you're a Christian, there should be works. That balance. Having the cart before the horse doesn't work. The horse has to lead. And if it's 2 horses, they can't be unequally yoked, because one will pull harder to the right or to the left, and you go in circles. So many pictures of the way life should be, all laid down for us. Okay, I'm going to try to get a little bit of footage of the camp here. I'm not going to be able to get to see a whole lot, because I go to state parks, and they cover maybe a few 100 acres. This park's got thousands of acres. It's a national park. It's big. And I don't know that I can, in a few short videos that I'm going to be here for 5 days, I can do it justice, but I'll try to get some of it. You can see some of it behind me, these different types of trees and what we're used to. The ocean is out there, the bay. I mean, essentially what's called the Gulf Shores. I'm not going to state the park name because I'm having a problem with our government on how they handle people here right now. I think I've mentioned it once before, but I'm not going to go any further, because I'm not going to mention the name. Just know that I'm in a park filming, and this could be a problem later on if they were to want to challenge me on it. It's against the law. They're challenging anybody the way they have, but they could. So this might have to come down. I hope it doesn't. So we don't know when Jesus is coming. We know that the times are changing fast to match up with everything that the Bible talks about at the end times. We're running to that, which means we're running to the rapture. There is a pre-trib rapture. If you don't believe in it, I will be happily surprised when you are surprised when we get a pre-trib rapture. Okay? Because we are going to get one. But there's also one in the middle and one at the end, so different size of the elephant. Till we meet in the clouds, God bless. I'm heading across these causeway bridges. It I think that's Mobile, Alabama in the distance. See some of the skyscrapers. There's some interesting footage here, driving through the very end of Florida, Pensacola Head, driving over these bridges. Get a little of the terrain in here as I'm driving in the park. You got these marshy areas. It's interesting, the guy over here is fishing from the pier.